Imagine being so beautiful, so perfect, so powerful that you decide to overthrow God himself. That's exactly what Lucifer attempted in the most audacious coup in cosmic history. This wasn't just rebellion. This was a calculated plan to steal the throne of the universe and replace the Creator with himself. Lucifer, whose name literally means light-bearer, was heaven's most magnificent angel, standing at God's right hand with access to divine secrets that no other created being possessed. But his perfection became his poison, his beauty became his downfall, and his plan to become God nearly shattered heaven itself. Today, I'm going to reveal Lucifer's step-by-step master plan to steal God's throne, why it almost worked, and how this ancient coup attempt still affects every single one of us today. Get ready to discover the most shocking betrayal in the history of creation. But first, if you're ready to uncover the hidden truths about the greatest villain in cosmic history, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're about to expose secrets that most churches are afraid to teach. Before Lucifer became Satan, before he was cast into hell, before he became the prince of darkness, he was the crown jewel of God's creation. Picture the most beautiful person you've ever seen, then multiply that by infinity. That was Lucifer. The Bible gives us an incredible description of what he was like before his fall. In Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 14, God describes him as the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. This wasn't just another angel. This was a masterpiece of divine artistry. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. Carnelian, chrysolite and emerald, topaz, onyx and jasper, sapphire, turquoise and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. Think about that for a moment. Lucifer was literally covered in precious stones. Not wearing them, but they were part of his very being. He was like a walking constellation, a living rainbow of divine light. When he moved, colors danced across heaven. When he spoke, his voice carried the harmony of creation itself. But his beauty wasn't just physical. The text says he was full of wisdom. Lucifer possessed intelligence that dwarfed human comprehension. He understood the mechanics of creation, the secrets of the universe, and the very thoughts of God. He was what we might call the ultimate insider. The passage continues. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. This is crucial to understand. Lucifer wasn't just any angel. He was a guardian cherub with direct access to God's throne. He walked in the very presence of the Almighty, surrounded by the fiery stones that represented God's glory. He was, in essence, heaven's prime minister. Imagine being that close to ultimate power. Every day, Lucifer witnessed the worship of countless angels, saw the entire universe respond to God's commands, and observed the flow of divine authority. He had a front-row seat to the great. The corruption of Lucifer didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn that started with a single, poisonous thought. I deserve better. Ezekiel 28 verse 17 reveals the exact moment when perfection became poison. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. Notice the progression here. First came pride in his beauty, then the corruption of his wisdom. This wasn't just vanity. This was something far more dangerous. Lucifer began to believe that his perfection made him equal to God. But here's where it gets really interesting. Lucifer didn't just wake up one day and decide to rebel. He began to study God's methods, looking for weaknesses, searching for opportunities. Remember, he had unlimited access to heaven's inner workings. He could observe how God made decisions, how he exercised power, how he maintained control over creation. In his twisted logic, Lucifer began to believe he had identified flaws in God's administration. I could do this better, he thought. I could rule more efficiently. I could make creation more beautiful, more perfect. This is the seductive nature of pride. It blinds us to our own limitations while magnifying our perceived strengths. Lucifer forgot one crucial fact. He was created, not eternal. He had a beginning, which meant he had limitations that God did not possess. But pride whispered lies in his ear. You're the most beautiful being in creation. You have access to all of God's secrets. You understand how the universe works. Why shouldn't you be in charge? The Bible gives us insight into Lucifer's thoughts in Isaiah 14 verses 13 to 14. Here are the 5 "I will" statements that reveal his master plan. I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. These weren't just wild boasts, they were carefully calculated steps in a cosmic coup. Each "I will" represents a specific phase of his plan to overthrow God and steal his throne. But before he could implement this plan, he needed something crucial: allies. Lucifer was brilliant enough to know that he couldn't overthrow God alone. He needed followers, supporters, an army of angels who would join his cause. But how do you convince perfect beings to rebel against perfection itself? The answer lies in Lucifer's greatest skill: deception. Remember, Lucifer was not just beautiful and wise, he was also incredibly persuasive. His voice carried the authority of one who had walked in God's presence. When he spoke, other angels listened. He began his recruitment campaign carefully, targeting specific angels who might be susceptible to his message. He didn't start with outright rebellion. He started with questions. Don't you think we deserve more recognition for our service? Shouldn't beings as magnificent as us have more authority? Why should we spend eternity serving when we could be ruling? It was a masterclass in manipulation. Lucifer planted seeds of discontent, watered them with seemingly reasonable arguments, and watched as rebellion began to bloom in angelic hearts. But his most powerful tool was his own example. Here was the most beautiful, most trusted angel in heaven expressing doubts about God's leadership. If Lucifer, who had walked closest to God, believed there was a better way, maybe he was right. The Bible tells us that 1/3 of all angels eventually joined Lucifer's rebellion. Think about that number. Out of countless millions or billions of angels, 1/3 chose to follow a created being rather than their creator. This wasn't a small insurgency. This was a massive movement that threatened the very stability of heaven itself. Revelation 12 verse 4 describes the scope of his influence. His tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. In biblical symbolism, stars often represent angels. So this passage reveals that Lucifer's rebellion involved astronomical numbers of heavenly beings. But how did he organize such a massive conspiracy without God knowing? The truth is, God did know. He saw every secret meeting, heard every whispered conversation, and understood exactly what Lucifer was planning. The question isn't whether God knew, the question is why he allowed it to continue. Now let's examine Lucifer's master plan in detail. Those 5 "I will" statements in Isaiah 14 weren't random boasts. They were a systematic strategy for cosmic conquest. Step 1. I will ascend to the heavens. This might seem strange since Lucifer was already in heaven, but the phrase "ascend to the heavens" has a deeper meaning. It means to rise above his current position, to claim authority he hadn't been given. Lucifer was essentially declaring independence from God's chain of command. Step 2. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. Here's where it gets specific. Lucifer planned to establish his own throne and position it above the stars of God, likely referring to other angels. He wasn't just planning to rebel. He was planning to become a rival ruler with his own kingdom. Step 3. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly. The Mount of Assembly refers to the place where God meets with his divine council. Lucifer was planning to take over God's seat of government, to become the chairman of heaven's board of directors. Step 4. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. In ancient Near Eastern thought, clouds were associated with divine glory and power. By ascending above the clouds, Lucifer was claiming superiority over God's manifestations of power. Step 5. I will make myself like the Most High. This was the ultimate goal, not just to be powerful, but to actually become like God himself. Lucifer wanted to transform from a created being into a deity worthy of worship. But here's what makes this plan so chilling. Lucifer believed he had found a legal loophole. In his twisted logic, he thought that if he could gather enough support, if he could demonstrate superior leadership, if he could prove himself more worthy of worship than God, then perhaps the universe itself would accept his claim to the throne. It was the ultimate hostile takeover bid, and for a moment it looked like it might actually work. The rebellion reached its peak when Lucifer made his move. The Bible doesn't give us all the details, but it's clear that open warfare broke out in heaven itself. Angels who had once worshipped together in perfect harmony were now divided into two armies, facing each other across the battlefields of eternity. But Lucifer had made one fatal miscalculation. Lucifer's plan was brilliant, his execution was flawless, and his support was massive. So what went wrong? How did the most perfectly crafted rebellion in history end in complete failure? The answer lies in something Lucifer fundamentally misunderstood about the nature of God and creation itself. Lucifer's entire plan was based on the assumption that power in heaven worked like power on earth, that if you could gather enough support, control enough resources, and demonstrate enough strength, you could successfully overthrow the existing authority. But God's power doesn't come from consensus or support or even strength in the traditional sense. God's power comes from the fact that He is the source of existence itself. Everything that exists, including Lucifer, derives its very being from God's creative will. Lucifer was trying to overthrow the foundation of his own existence. It was like trying to lift yourself by pulling on your own bootstraps, or like a character in a novel trying to kill the author. The moment Lucifer raised his hand against God, he was fighting against the very source of his life, his beauty, his wisdom, and his power. It wasn't just rebellion, it was cosmic suicide. Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9 describes what happened next. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Notice that it says Lucifer was not strong enough. This wasn't a close battle that could have gone either way. Despite having 1/3 of heaven's angels on his side, despite his perfect planning and flawless execution, Lucifer's defeat was inevitable. Why? Because you cannot successfully rebel against omnipotence. You cannot overthrow infinity. You cannot steal a throne that exists outside the very concept of power as we understand it. Michael the archangel led God's loyal forces, but the real battle wasn't won through military might. It was won the moment Lucifer chose to rebel, because that choice revealed the fundamental impossibility of his goal. But here's the most tragic part: Lucifer still doesn't understand this. Even now, cast down from heaven, stripped of his beauty, transformed from an angel of light into the prince of darkness, he still believes he can win. Before we continue with this incredible story, I need you to do something important. If this revelation about Lucifer's master plan is opening your eyes to truths you've never heard before, you need to make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because we publish biblical revelations like this every week. Hidden truths, forbidden knowledge, and ancient mysteries that most people never discover. We're about to reveal why Lucifer's failed coup is still affecting your life today, and how his ancient strategy is being played out in our modern world. Here's something that will shock you. Lucifer still thinks he can win, even after being cast out of heaven, even after losing his beauty and glory, even after being transformed into Satan. He continues to pursue his original goal of stealing God's throne. But how is this possible? How can an intelligent being continue to pursue a goal that has already proven impossible? The answer lies in the corrupting nature of pride itself. Pride doesn't just make you overestimate your abilities, it makes you unable to accept reality when that reality contradicts your self-image. Lucifer can't admit that his plan was fundamentally flawed, because doing so would require acknowledging that he was wrong about his own nature and capabilities. And for a being whose entire identity was built on being perfect, such an admission is psychologically impossible. So instead of accepting defeat, he has reframed his strategy. If he can't overthrow God directly, he'll try to prove God wrong indirectly. If he can corrupt God's creation, deceive God's people, and cause enough chaos and suffering in the universe, perhaps he can demonstrate that God's way doesn't work. This is why Satan is called the accuser of the brethren. He stands before God's throne, pointing to human failures and saying, "See, your creation is flawed. Your methods don't work. I could do better." It's the ultimate sour grapes mentality. If I can't have the throne, I'll prove that whoever sits on it doesn't deserve it. But there's something even more disturbing about Lucifer's current strategy. He's no longer just trying to prove himself worthy of God's throne. He's trying to drag as many created beings down with him as possible. Think about it this way. If Lucifer is going to be eternally separated from God, he wants to make sure he's not alone. Every human soul he deceives, every angel he corrupts, every act of rebellion he inspires is another victory in his twisted game. He knows he can't win the war, but he's determined to win as many battles as possible along the way. This explains the relentless nature of evil in our world. Satan isn't just randomly causing trouble. He's pursuing a strategic goal. Every temptation, every lie, every act of darkness is part of his ongoing attempt to prove that God's creation is fundamentally flawed. You might be thinking, this is all very interesting as ancient history, but what does it have to do with my life today? The answer is everything. Lucifer's original strategy to steal God's throne has been adapted for modern times. Since he can't directly overthrow God, he's focused on overthrowing God's authority in individual human lives. Every time you're tempted to put yourself at the center of your universe, you're experiencing an echo of Lucifer's original rebellion. Every time you think you know better than God, every time you decide to be the ultimate authority in your own life, you're following the same path that led to Lucifer's downfall. The 5 "I will" statements that characterized Lucifer's rebellion have modern equivalents. I will live my life on my own terms. This is the modern version of I will ascend to the heavens. I will be more important than others. This echoes I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will be the center of my social circle. This mirrors I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly. I will rise above my circumstances. This reflects I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will be like God in my own life. This is the ultimate expression of I will make myself like the Most High. Satan doesn't need to get you to worship him directly. He just needs to get you to worship yourself. He doesn't need to convince you to rebel against God's existence. He just needs to convince you to rebel against God's authority in your life. This is why pride is considered the root of all sin. It's not just one sin among many. It's the fundamental attitude that makes all other sins possible. When we put ourselves on the throne of our lives, we create a miniature version of Lucifer's rebellion. But here's the hope. Unlike Lucifer, we have the opportunity to recognize our rebellion and turn back to God. We can choose humility over pride, surrender over rebellion, worship over self-glorification. The same choice that faced the angels in heaven faces each of us every day. Will we serve God's kingdom, or will we try to build our own? As we conclude this journey into the darkest chapter of cosmic history, I want you to remember something crucial. Lucifer's plan failed completely. Despite his perfect beauty, his vast intelligence, his insider access to heaven's secrets, and his massive army of supporters, he could not steal God's throne. He could not become God. He could not even remain in God's presence. But the story doesn't end with Lucifer's defeat. It ends with God's ultimate victory over the rebellion that Satan continues to wage. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came to earth not just to save humanity from sin, but to permanently defeat the one who first introduced sin into creation. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus accomplished what no military victory could. He broke the power of Satan's accusations and provided a way for rebels to become children of God. Colossians 2 verse 15 describes Jesus' victory this way. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Where Lucifer's plan to steal God's throne was motivated by pride and self-glorification, Jesus' plan to reclaim what Satan had stolen was motivated by love and self-sacrifice. Lucifer said, "I will exalt myself." Jesus said, "I will humble myself." Lucifer sought to steal God's throne. Jesus willingly left his throne to rescue those whom Lucifer had deceived. This is the ultimate irony. The angel who tried to steal God's throne was defeated by the God who gave up his throne to save his enemies. And here's the amazing part: through Jesus, we can be part of God's ultimate victory over Lucifer's rebellion. We don't have to remain casualties of the war that began in heaven. We can choose to serve the God whom Lucifer tried to overthrow. The story of Lucifer's failed coup is more than ancient history. It's the background to every spiritual battle you'll ever face. Understanding his original plan helps us recognize his current strategies and resist his ongoing deceptions. But there's so much more to the story. Did you know that Lucifer's defeat in heaven was just the beginning of his war against God? His next target was the crown jewel of God's creation, humanity itself. And his strategy for corrupting the human race was even more sophisticated than his plan to steal God's throne. In our next video, we're going to expose Satan's master plan for destroying humanity. A plan so subtle, so clever, that most people fall for it without even realizing they're under attack. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now to discover how Satan weaponized the very gift God gave humanity, free will, and turned it into the perfect tool for rebellion. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we're committed to revealing the hidden truths that will transform your understanding of the spiritual battle raging around us every day. Until next time, remember, the throne belongs to God, and no created being, no matter how beautiful, wise, or powerful, can ever change that truth.